Good morning, everybody. As we go to the Chitas of today, we're holding on the portion of Yisrei. We're holding on chapter 18, verse number 24. Vayishma Yisrei lekel chosnei Yisrei Vayisha Moshe, and Moshe listened to the voice of his father-in-law. Vayasas kol asher amar, and he did whatever his father-in-law told him to do. Vayivcha Moshe ad shechayel, and Moshe Rabbeinu chose established men, well-established people amongst the Jewish people. He put them heads upon the people. Sorry, Alafim, he made leaders of thousands. Sorry, mayors, leaders of hundreds. Sorry, Chamishim, leaders of 50s. Sorry, Asaris, leaders of 10. And they judged of the people at all times. The harder thing they brought to Moshe, every small thing you should to him, they judged themselves. Now she says that Yosalama, and they would be judges over the people. It created a judicial system. Avian Masin, they brought Yishu to him. They would judge. The word Yishpitu is the same as Yishpatu. There's a concept of they will judge. Yishlach Moshe Chosnach, and Moshe Rabbeinu sent away his father-in-law. Vayelech le'alatzei. This is the previous Lachi. Already, we know that this happened a couple of years later, not a couple of years, a year and a half later, after much after the Matan Torah. And Muktam Mukhba Torah, there's no chronological order. He went back to his land. Like Gaia, he went to convert the rest of his family. And that completes the Chumash for today. We are in the chapter 23 of Tanya, and the Alter Rebbe is the middle explaining the greatness of learning Torah. And when a Jew learns Torah, he actually becomes one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even greater than doing a mitzvah. Here, discussion of the exalted unity with God, attained through the study of Torah, which is even greater than accomplished in service of mitzvahs, explains why Torah study is much loftier. Mitzvahs than doing all the commandments. Even from prayer. Which we know, Al Pi Kabbalah, that tefillah, the concept of prayer, is a Kabbalistic concept to begin with. The whole concept of prayer. And it's affects the supernal words, the concept of prayer. But nevertheless, the Torah is greater. And although the law requires anyone whose Torah study is not entire occupation, he must interrupt his study of learning. He has to interrupt his studies for prayer, which seemingly it sounds, according to this law, that prayer is greater than the learning of Torah. That's not true, because the reason is not because prayer is greater, because anyway you make stops. You make stops for a lot of things from your learning. So what's the difference? So if you stop to go eat, and you stop to go and then go work, and you stop to go and have a conversation, and you do so many stops from your learning. So if you can stop for everything else, you surely can stop for davening. And that's why if you're not Teidasim Nasa, you stop anyway for so many different things. So if there's time for everything else, there's surely time to daven, surely time to pray. Therefore, because in any case, he interrupts. Thus, it's not the law which causes him to interrupt. Not that there's a law you have to daven. No, if you Teidasim Nasa, if you be able to learn Torah 24/7, then you wouldn't have to daven. The law merely states that the interruption, which he would made regardless, he made at the time designated for prayer. As soon as he interrupts his studies, he automatically is obligated to pray. You should go from learning straight to davening, because if you're going to interrupt the davening and interrupt for other things. And in this explanation about the loftiness and the greatness of learning Torah, the wise man will be able to draw upon himself a sense of great awe. That's why when you come to learn Torah, we should come to learn with trepidation and with true humility. When it comes to studying Torah, he's burning, because when a person will consider how through his learning of Torah, how his soul and its garments of the soul, which is thought and speech, that are found in his brain and his mouth, are truly fused, perfect unity with divine will and the infinite light of Orein Seferchu, Mamish, in reality, which is revealed in the Torah that I'm learning. So if a person would realize that every verse he says, he's simply connecting to the essence of God, and he's so to say taking within him the essence of God, this infinite light manifests in one's Torah study in such a lofty level, which that's upper and lower worlds are truly as naught in comparison with it. One verse of the Torah is greater than everything, and everything is nothing to that verse or that halacha that I'm learning. That's why the Torah cannot ultimately come within it, that you'll be able to see the loftiness. That's when something comes within something, he can see it. It actually accentuates it. Over here, it's so lofty, it's so great, that comes in is not recognizable. The Orein Seif that comes into my being is mislabish in me, is clothed itself in me, is not recognizable. So lofty it is that it's not recognizable. And nevertheless, I am totally nullified to that great godliness that is being revealed within me at this present time. It's like an encompassing light. It hovers above him, which gives them their real life force. Okay, but he has within him. Actually, there is something that comes within him. There is a concept that comes. You have an understanding. Learning Torah is comprehensible. So there is. You can't say nothing is seen. There is something. We could see the beauty of Torah. So there is a concept of a shine that comes in it. Which each person can handle from learning Torah. Because the whole purpose is you're not going to be nullified. So thank God, in a way, that God does not reveal himself, his infinite light, when the Mashiach comes. As it says, expression of Isaiah, that the world will be filled with the knowledge of God. That over and every flesh shall see. We'll see godliness. Imagine a situation where we're able to see godliness, whether it's with the physical eyes, see godliness, or even with our mind, see godliness. Right now, we have a little of understanding of godliness. We get a little bit of excitement in godliness. It inspires us. We don't see godliness, even though at the time when we learn, there's a revelation of godliness that's happening in our lives. The Gemara asked the question, and if we don't see it, what do we gain out of it? And the Gemara says, the neshama sees. So even though I don't see it with my own eyes, and even with my own brain, but my neshama gets the full energy of godliness that's happening right now when I sit and learn Torah. So when he considers, and a person considers that the very same time, the very same divine light that is completely beyond the capacity of world manifests itself openly in the Torah study, the thinking man will naturally experience a sense of awe when he studies Torah. And that's why it's brought out, it's important, the achana to limit our Torah, the preparation of learning Torah. That one should come to the learning Torah with awe, with trepidation, with humility, with respect. And that's what the verse says. The Eibishter commanded us that we should, these all this Torah, the Yira, the concept of respect. Derech Eretz, called Malatera. So according to the verse, observing mitzvahs would be the first step, and this leads to the fear of God. Logically, however, the performance of commandments would seem to be a result of one's fear of Him, and not vice versa. The Alter Rebbe therefore explains the above verse speaks of a higher level of awe, and that is the prerequisites for performing of commandments. This level can only be attained a result of one's observing mitzvahs. Now, if commandment lead one to a higher level of fear of God, surely the study of Torah leads one to a higher level of fear of God. If the verse says "Vayatzivenu Hashem," that a commandment brings about a person to fear God, how does a commandment bring about a fear of God? Because Vayatzivenu Hashem, we realize that a commandment is asked by God. A commandment, imagine that Melech Malcham Lacham HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God is infinite, is asking me, a simple boss of Adam, a simple human being, to do something for him. It should create an unbelievable awness in God and an unbelievable love of God. Al Yira Gedela Zu, regarding this great fear, which is a higher level of fear, awness of God, it says, Ein Chachma Ein Yira. If there's no wisdom, there's no fear. This concept of wisdom represents Torah study, and fear the higher level of the awe of God, which can be reached only by the way of Torah. By contrast, the statement, if there's no fear, there's no wisdom, refers to the lower level of fear, which is a prerequisite to study of Torah, as stated. In relation to this level of fear, the Torah is called a gateway to the courtyard, meaning the sole means of entering the courtyard. Visit the higher level of fear, as explained elsewhere. So it says, Im ein yira ein chachma, im ein chachma ein yira. If there's no low level of fear, there's no true wisdom. But if there's no true higher level of fear, then there's no true wisdom. If there's no wisdom, if there's no true wisdom, then there's no concept of fear of God. So the higher level of fear comes from wisdom. Not that people have guilt and all these things. That's a lower level of fear. That's that people are afraid of punishment. That's all a lower level of fear. And therefore, we need that, because you would never open a book if you didn't have a lower level of fear. But ultimately, through opening the book and through learning Torah, we should come to a higher level of fear, which is the concept of awe in God. That we realize the awness, the awesomeness of God, the greatness of God, and therefore how is it impossible to have not the concept of awe before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the problem is, the lav kol meichel sovel da. Not every mind, however, can attain such a fear. Most of us have the lower level of fear. We're afraid of retribution. We're afraid of guilt issues. We have all these issues because simply we don't have a broad mind. We don't have a great understanding in why we should have the concept of awe HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're afraid of the unknown. And we need to broaden our minds. But nevertheless, even one mind who cannot, yet even one whose mind cannot bear such a fear, the concept of awness of God, not even a minute part of it. It could not only be because of his mind, it could be actually because of his light-weighted soul. He doesn't have a very strong soul. It's not even his fault. And which comes from its source, you really need to know the capacity of your soul. So maybe the soul can only have a lower level of fear, and a concept of a fear of God, that he's going to come and punish me, or he's going to go, I'm going to go to Nathan, I'm going to go to Gehenna, whatever it might be, which is also a concept because it brings a person to do the right thing. But a self-understood, we could understand that's a lower level of fear, and it could be because he doesn't have the capacity, not because he's not smart, because his soul capacity is not that capable to that. Maybe his soul comes from the lowest levels of Asiyah. So then, if it comes from the lowest level of Asiyah, then his soul is basically action-oriented. The lowest level of a soul is the world of Asiyah, which is action-oriented. Now you have Asiyah there, you have the 10 manifestations of godliness, you have Chochmah Asiyah, but it's Chochmah Asiyah. It's the wisdom connected to action. It's Chesed Asiyah. It's the Chesed connected to action. It's not a lofty concept in a way, because it's connected to the concept of an action. So that's why most of us are action-prone individuals. Everything is connected to action, to Asiyah, because that's where our neshama comes from. Our neshama comes from an action-based place. And that's our avodah. Now, the Rebbe is telling you that's your avodah. You don't need to have such an a yira, because you don't need that yira. We need to have a yira that's connected to action. That's our avodah. Our avodah is an action-based situation. And therefore, we don't need to have an awe of God. We need to have a little bit of yira. That's why this is also an important thing that a person should realize who he is. He doesn't need to have unbelievable faculties and unbelievable greatness to accomplish something in this world. The Baal Shem Tov said, "Of neshama can come down to the world to do one good deed, and that's all you needed your whole avodah to do that one deed, to help another Jew." And that was the avodah. That is my avodah. And everybody needs to know their avodas Hashem and how much yira they need to be able to accomplish their avodah. And that's it. And they don't need to have more. They don't need to have more. I mean, they can, as the Alter Rebbe said before, you can pray to the Eibishter that the God can give you a different avodah, or can change your neshama, or give you a capability, connect to it, give you ibur on neshama, the concept of tzaddik, connecting to your soul. But ultimately, every person has his personal avodah, his personal service, his personal obligation, his purpose in this world. And that's the yira that you need to generate within you to create that service. Because that's the soul. That's your soul. Don't want to be somebody else. And therefore, even he should, even he should not be deterred from the actual performance of Torah and mitzvahs for want of this fear. I will explain further. So therefore, you need to have what level of fear brings you to your service. And if you accomplish that, even though you have not the awness of somebody else, that you see that he is so moving and inspired, that's his avodah. That's his service. And that's what he needs. I need A, he needs B. And thank God there are thousands of ways to accomplish this. And not only thousands, maybe millions of ways to accomplish this, because it's infinite. Everything comes from God. And therefore, Baruch Hashem, every person can accomplish their avodah through their character, through their avas Hashem, and their yiras Hashem. That completes the Tanya for today. Today is the 13th day of the month with this chapter, 69 to 71. Do those 3 chapters, you do the chitas of the day. Number 1, today, like Yom Yom, the Rebbe writes, Yahrzeit is observed on the anniversary of the day of death, even in the first year, and even if the burial was much later than the day of passing. So the Yahrzeit is always on the day of passing, even though sometimes it could be a week later, the day of burial. So the shiva would start even later, maybe. But the yahrzeit is nevertheless on the day of passing. My grandfather, Frierdiker Rebbe says, previous Lord says that my grandfather, Shmuel, when he was 7, his father, the Tzemach Tzedek, once answered him, the kindness and special quality in God's making man upright. Why do humans walk upright? To walk erectly, they stand straight. Kufa, it says, right, erect individual stands on 2 feet. Is that though he walks on the earth, he should see the heavens. Even though your feet are on the ground, Baruch Hashem, but nevertheless, you should always have your eyes to heavens. Not so with the beasts who go on all fours, they see only the earth. Always lift up your eyes to heaven. Have a beautiful day. I want to first of all invite you all. Tonight, you can still come to the wonderful JLI class at 7 p.m. at Chabad, which is called Talmud Decoded. It's a phenomenal class on Torah Shabbat Peh and the oral tradition. And that's at 7 p.m. at Chabad. It's not on Zoom, I'm sorry. So you have to come to Chabad. And Mitch, we'll see you tomorrow at 8 o'clock. We'll continue.